Migrants will now have to wait in Mexico for their immigration court date. In the U.S., the previous policy allowed asylum seekers to stay in America while the courts process their information. The move is seen as a response to the growing number of migrants from Central America fleeing violence and seeking asylum in the U.S. So for more on this, let's bring in the New York Times Homeland Security correspondent Ron Nixon. He's with me now from Washington. Ron, thank you so much for joining us. So let's talk about this. No problem. Let's break it down. Explain to us just how this new policy works and why the Trump administration feels that they need to implement this right now, especially as Congress debates funding for this border wall and border security.
Right. So essentially what they're saying is that people are coming into the country with asylum claims that won't hold water. But as they wait for their day in immigration courts, they're being released into the general public. And very few asylum claims actually are granted. So as a result, the people just stay in the country, something that the Trump administration calls catch and release. So what this new policy does is essentially says that these people will come to the border, present themselves, say they are requesting asylum, but they will stay in Mexico until they have a court date where their asylum claims can be adjudicated.
So let's talk about what the previous policy was, recent previous policy was, the fact that you could cross the border, apply for asylum, and then you were able to wait it out in the U.S. Talk to us about how that worked. And, the argument is there were problems with that sometimes people just didn't show up for their court dates.
Right. So previously what happened is that you would come, either present yourself at a port of entry or cross illegally and then give yourself up to a Border Patrol agent and request asylum. You would be seen by, as a process, you would then be seen by an asylum officer who would take your claim, and you'd be processed by Customs Border Protection, and then turned over to ICE, and you would be given a court date. So until you have that court date, you would then be released into the general public, particularly families with children, because you cannot keep children detained for more than 20 days. So people would be released more than likely with an ankle bracelet until their court date. But because there are nearly 800,000 court cases, immigration court cases in the immigration courts, there's a tremendous backlog. So it takes years for people to actually get to a court. And in the meantime, they are here in the U.S.
Okay, so then we sort of fast forward to what the policy is now, and we've been showing images from Tijuana, the camps where the migrants are staying, waiting for their asylum applications to be processed. They're bare bones. They do not look like a place that you want to spend months or possibly years waiting for a claim to be processed. Can Mexico absorb this? Can Mexico support these camps that are popping up along the border?
Well, that's the question. Mexico agreed to this, but can they actually handle this? Because, there are tens of thousands of people who would be waiting possibly for years. And the Mexican government has said that they would provide visas, work visas, and humanitarian aid for people. But, a lot of those border towns in Mexico are struggling with a lot of things, including violence from, drug cartels. So are you going to be able to have people sitting around or either crowding into those places where you have this level of violence going on? So, again, it's unclear how Mexico is actually going to be able to handle this.
Yeah, the same type of violence that many of these people spent, days and days walking from to get away from.
That's correct.
So this is the first step, first major step, maybe in a more aggressive immigration policy change. Do you expect more changes from the Trump administration?
I think that they are trying to find ways to just reduce immigration overall, legal and illegal immigration. And, they've done everything from the travel ban to the former Attorney General Jeff Sessions saying that certain things are not, you can't apply for asylum based on, fleeing a gang or domestic violence from Central America, to changing the processes with various visa programs. So they're doing a number of things to reduce what they call illegal immigrants gaming the system to stay in the U.S.
All right, Ron Nixon, thanks for walking us through that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.